maybe tell me a little bit about, when did you come into ops? How did you get here
Yeah, okay.
as the second director of operations?
Yeah, because I guess I can appreciate the perspective that I was a student, and I remember still freshly the days of being very young, very unaware of like how deep the rabbit hole can go sometimes, and just the anxiety of like not knowing what I'm doing. I remember graduating with my undergrad and just commencement happened, and the next day I was like, oh, where do I go? So there's that perspective. But if I rewind to, I guess, the start, I mean, why did I go to UWM? I grew up in Brookfield, and I never thought of UWM being the premier atmospheric science program, but I knew they had a good one. And it just happened that it was close, it was affordable, it was something that didn't pull me out of state. So that's why I wound up. It wasn't until my sophomore year that I finally sat down with John Call and he said, hey, you're atmospheric science, what's your course load looking like? And he sat down and did the whole course load, all the class schedule, right in one go. And I was like, oh wow, I didn't know you could just plot it out like that. And that was a turning point. But it was about that same time, I believe it was, I would say spring of 2015, I was actually working one of my jobs in the dorms, swiping IDs in Sandburg, had a computer that I could, putz around with, and somebody saw I had some weather stuff up. And it was Lily Chapman who actually came up and said, hey, if you like the weather, are you atmospheric science? And I said, oh yeah, that's the hope next year. And she invited me to the Atmospheric Science Club. And I believe that's where the topic of innovative weather came up as well. That was my first time ever even hearing of it. And sure enough, after time, I went to some Atmo Club stuff and I learned of innovative weather. Honestly, it's been long enough. I don't remember the application process. I do remember the interview process with Mike and Paul, because that was maybe the first time I ever really met Paul, which was intimidating as all get up. But yeah, so I guess I can thank Lily Chapman for kind of pulling me from the dorm security to the idea of Atmosci. And then from that point on, when you get into the upperclassmen courses, I was really, much more ingrained. So 2016 was when my intern training started, operational, or late 2016, I suppose, and ever since then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that transition from, assistant director to director of operations.
Yeah, I remember that summer clearly because we had the date on the calendar of November 1st, 2019. It's my ship in that extent. The transition was much longer and not as smooth as that. But I had the time to prepare, I suppose, knowing that that's where things were going to go. And I can be a very anxious person, so there was a lot of anxiety of, being the assistant director of programming at the state of like IWOPS and everything in those days. It wasn't exactly rock solid at all times. So I was used to being on call, taking questions at all hours for some tech stuff. But it was that elevation of, I'll be available for everything always. And thank God Mike was the guy that was like, I can still go to him and ask for something. And that happened a lot. But it was that preparation of this is a step beyond. I need to be more present. I need to make sure that one of my biggest lessons was saying no so that I can say yes in places that matter. And that was where, I had learned it. I had my come to Jesus moment with Mike several times. But that was where it really came to application. The rubber hit the road, and it was a case of I need to give this my 110%. I need to really focus. And that was fall of 2019. So guess what happened 6 months later? Yep. Things got really hectic. So.
And then, so talk about that. I mean, yeah, all of a sudden you have the ship and we're starting to sail and COVID happens. Tell me a little bit about how you got us through, what was entailed with that, to move. But, for you, how did the team get through that?
Yeah, the whole pandemic from day one was kind of a fight or flight. And I do, in retrospect, find that I never left that fight or flight mentality for even 2 years afterwards. We wouldn't have gotten through it, and this is, I think, the whole history of innovative weather. We wouldn't be here without the quality of the students that were just committed to stick through it, to, fight a way through the adversity, and that really helped. So when the pandemic was hitting and we knew, like, we've got to go into remote operations somehow, we had we had 5 computers in the office, and we had some ancient laptops that you really couldn't trust. And the question was, how do we, like, the only thought of like remote operations was we had the Go box, which was something's happening, pack up the computer, go home and take care of it and plug it in and get it going. So we had to completely rethink how that worked. And a lot of that thought process was the assistant directors of operations and programming at the time that helped, really take the concepts and I can't be everywhere all at once. So they really helped get the computers, get them running, help conceptualize how people can use them remotely. So that was, Alex Moxon, Austin Scheib, Austin Hoyne, Michael Vossen that really helped us kind of solidify. And it was long hours. It was, how do we conceptualize the communication process? How do you discuss the forecast? How do we train? There's a whole group of pre-interns that had to move to a remote training. It was a very long summer of 2020 that people were willing to put some extra time, were flexible. Communication was really deliberate to make sure that we were working together, and it worked. And the students really did what they needed to do. And we found a new reality in the operational setting that we have now with the capacity for remote operations and the privilege that we have for that, but also the need to be face-to-face and really enjoy that presence in the office together. You can't put a value on that sometimes too. So,
talk a little bit about the foundation and the culture that you inherited. What was its value to you, and were you able to feel that you were able to continue that? Yeah.
So. I think I have some of the best example from Mike of what a good culture is, and how do you set an example, I guess. What was new to me was the regular maintenance. A lot of times I correlate the program to like a carousel. And I'm getting people on the horses that go up and down, and we're all riding the carousel. And every year or two, things come around that you gotta go over again. And there's certain weather topics that, there's the severe weather review, there's the winter weather review, those are regular stays of the carousel. And then there's also cultural points that, after a year you may see that enough people have turned over that you realize like, oh, we're a little young, communication's not quite what I would have liked, and you have to start setting the example. Be there, be present. So be there in the evenings, check in, keep a regular thread of communication and know. Half it too is relying on the assistant directors and the senior staff who are there, they're the boots on the ground, they're there every evening, and trust their intuition and their input to know where, we may be able to make minor corrections or help foster a healthier culture. I couldn't have done it without having people that I trusted, telling me the truth of what they're seeing and feeling so that we could help correct, keep the carousel spinning, but really make sure that we do maintain the culture and good communication and, really helping lend a hand to one another, being good servant leaders, even if we're not physically face-to-face with one another, having the capacity to do that remotely and be a confident leader and a humble servant at the same time.
Yeah, that's great. I like the carousel analogy. Maybe just talk a little bit about what has impressed you about the students. You were a student.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're leading students.
Mm-hmm.
You see those perspectives. What impresses you about the students?
Yeah, I mean, the constant excitement and commitment. We give, and we just saw this today, we give the students space to talk about something and they get so excited. And I don't have the outside perspective that much of working in a place where people are there for the paycheck and for the job, because everybody here is for the enjoyment, the excitement of what we can do, the impact we have, the opportunity just to be here. And I think I'm extremely grateful for that excitement. It's really provided a great value to having that, people willing to go the extra mile when they really genuinely care about what we're doing here, and we're well connected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good. We'll move on to those last 4 questions,
yeah.
Or 3 questions, depending on.
Mm-hmm.
How did innovative weather affect you personally, your personal life? I'll do personal and professional. That's kind of the way that I'll look at it. But, for you personally, how did innovative weather
Innovative weather's impacted me a lot, in more ways than I can probably count. I think one of the biggest ones was what many of us took away, me the same as anybody else, the come to Jesus moments we talk about. Because as a student and as somebody that was younger, I did not know how to say no to things. I overcommitted. It caused credibility lapses. And it was that lesson that I learned that really helped me start prioritizing things that mattered. And at that time, innovative weather, but relationships with my family, with my friends. That always helped me keep alignment, so that was great. And then it goes much farther with my time as assistant director, or as director of operations. My time as director of operations really taught me sometimes how to handle my anxieties. I never saw myself as a high anxiety person, but I learned I can be in different scenarios. And some of it's making sure that I'm not, being anxious over things that I can't control, and controlling things that need to be controlled and letting things that don't need to be controlled on their own. And that took me some time to understand is, when should I step back and let things kind of be the way they can, knowing that if I have to step in and correct it, I can. But what kind of forecast do I say, nope, I'm gonna let them kind of run at it. If they need help, they'll call me. But every fiber of my being wants to say, hey, you're gonna check on this? Do you see this? And I have to really let that sit. That those anxieties of, being responsible for something that never stops. It's always active. I really had to combat with that and find ways to be more productive, be more efficient, be a better, member of this team, just to do that, and that really helped combat anxiety. So there's 2 degrees of lessons, and there's 100 more that I could probably go on about. But
tell me about a student that a student story that either inspired you or challenged you that you just it's like the go-to. When I say director of operations, student, what story comes to mind?
It's tough to pin down exactly, because there's so many points where I had to learn the lessons myself of how to effectively lead and how to lead kindly to move. I think the one that really I can think about is the impact of Michael Vossen, because he became involved through the pandemic, and I was still stuck in the state of fight or flight. And he's someone who came in with extremely strong skill sets and a great vision to help drive us to a better, healthier operation. And the chaos of the fight or flight of the pandemic was, it stifled my ability to envision improved, operations and how can we do things better. And it really took some breaking out of my shell to realize that there's much better we could be doing. And there are cautious ways we have to implement dramatic change and how to make sure that we're still providing good value without any major compromise. But Michael Vossen is someone that we wouldn't be here today without the changes he made and the help that he had along the way. And he had a lot of help. But his impact helped teach me how to lead better, how to listen better, how to really guide a team through change and let somebody else drive the car for a little while. And let them do what they do best, because I wasn't ready for it after the pandemic. It was so much of a learn how to run it and make sure we survive the pandemic. And he was the first one that said, I know what we can do and I can do this. And it took me a while to really settle and be comfortable with letting him do it. Yeah.
That's cool. It's a great opportunity for growth for both of you.
Yeah.
Because you both had to butt heads a little bit more in humility and
Yep.
how do we interact, and so it was beautiful. For me, sitting back, just more as an advisor and how can this help? This is a good moment if we can survive it, and you did, which is huge. Yeah. Something that makes you laugh, something that is just a story from your time.
Can I talk about Ryan Woodley?
You sure. Maybe you can give me 2 of them, but yeah.
Yeah. The one that makes me laugh is the story kind of the closing stages of the Brewers, because we learned a lot operationally. I learned a lot personally. that was a point of graduation of my mindset to some degree, because the Brewers were one of our closest, if not our closest partners. They had incredible impact for so many people. And as some of their leadership changed, we felt the change. And one of the things that Mike did for my development, which I didn't really understand at the time, was to take me along to meet with the new operations director there and discuss some of the conflict in our forecast. Well, I was young and doe-eyed. I thought it was let's go catch up, see, help them feel out the new changes. Little did I know that was very much of negotiating the prevention of a breakup, essentially. So I felt there at the time it was how can we serve you best? And when he basically came and said, I don't really read your forecast because it's a little too long. I want something better. My mindset was, okay, let's do better. Let's make it work for him. And the reality is he was not a high context person. He was a lower context that wanted to have the lesser detail that was correct. So it was funny, looking back in hindsight, how I was thinking about how do we make this work for him, when in reality, Mike was sitting there ready to say, let's not continue because this is not going to serve our mission well to serve the degree that you want. And I didn't even realize that. So that was pretty funny in that. And then the funny part was watching the rain delay, which was less than, I think, 2 months after our service stopped, seeing him getting reamed out by the umpires, and with the rain coming down through the roof. So there's comedy in that, but there's also a lot of growth that, like, in hindsight, it's funny how naive I was and how I learned how to manage relationships and see those realities a bit more. So that's a funny one.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Anything that I haven't asked that you want to say?
I've been saying it a lot these last couple of weeks, and I think I need to say it as much as I can, is express my gratitude. This probably goes back to the earlier question, which I'm glad I pulled this back. But I would like to express my gratitude because when Mike was stepping away, we held a celebration. It was a big moment for you to say, we couldn't be here without the students, and all the trials and tribulations, the students are the ones that made the impact. And these last couple of years, I've felt that too. And especially as we're nearing these closing stages, man, we wouldn't be here without the students. I might help try to see us to a certain point and help everyone get to their goals. But if we didn't have people that really wanted to put all the application of their education, that were excited and ambitious, that said, I've got ideas of how we can do better, and I would love the experience to work on it and implement it. And I didn't see that when Mike was leaving, that exactly how impactful that was. And I know now that we wouldn't be here, we would have been gone 2 or 3 years ago, let alone 10 years ago, if we didn't have the degree of excited, ambitious, committed students. And that carries to the servant leadership that we've seen them really embody, and now to the alumni that are all over the place, that are willing to guide the current students and be mentors and be stewards of that culture. I can't be grateful enough. I've learned so much from them. I wouldn't have the opportunities I've had now if they didn't give what they gave. So I got to say thank you to all the students. The same goes to our partners too. I mean, they're willing for them to take a risk on us sometimes, and then trust us when they really needed to. We wouldn't be here without them too, but the student ambition is really what drove us here these 17 years. Yeah.